Hello everyone. I know that there's a lot of fans of the Kentucky Holy Land out there, and so I thought I would just record a walkthrough of all the books I have, which as many as I have collected over the past few months. These are still not all of them about this special area in the American Catholic Church. First, it might be worth saying for anybody who is unaware of what the Kentucky Holy Land is. Basically, after the Revolutionary War, it was the home base, this place past the 13 colonies where the rest of the American Catholic Church was going to grow from. And so I think just to jump into things, I can kind of explain some of the history as we go. If you want to really dive into this history yourself, the best and closest book to the original story, so this was written in the 1840s by Martin John Spalding. He was hearing most of his information from Father Stephen Badin, who was really the one who stayed the longest. There were some earlier priests than him, but they either left or, did not stay. And so Father Badin is the ultimate storyteller. He was there among the first Catholic colonists, and he can tell their stories well. And so this book goes from really the beginnings of like Kentucky history even. So it has the Indian Wars and all of that to like the Jubilee of 1826. So yeah, very special book. And the next one is written a little later. This is written at the end of that 19th century by Benjamin J. Webb, the Centenary of Catholicity in Kentucky. A really big book. I'm just going to show you this one. Really small text, but this basically goes through all the different things and gives you like a copious amount of information, probably more than you would want. But if you want to really like dig into some of the smaller details that this book kind of goes through fast, this is going to be the one you would want. And for modern readers, I think An American Holy Land by Clyde Cruse, who was the Archdiocese of Louisville historian for many years. This is his book right here, his basically magnum opus, and he tells the story like up to modern times. So these books are going to leave off sort of like at the end of that Civil War era, or even like at the end of the 19th century. But this book is going to go all the way up into the late 1970s and all of that. But for like deeper scholarship, this is what I would recommend: a dissertation by Sister Mary Ramona Mattingly. She came from the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, and she wrote this very in-depth dissertation, like going even deeper into some of the details and things like that. Very professional, very well done. I think if you want the things that nobody else is going to know, this is going to be the book where you're going to find those in. Like, I don't even know how she found most of the stuff, because I think just in general, like a lot of the Kentucky Catholic history was lost. There were fires. I know that there was a fire with the Sisters of Loretto, which most of the Father Nerick's information was just completely lost. Some of it's like stored far away. I think there's some in Maryland that's separated, that's about our story. And so it's all just kind of scattered about. But this dissertation right here, I think, collects a good amount of fun things to know. And so to kind of get through this stack real quick, I actually have some other books on my other side. This is going to start to break down like into the different niches. So there's many different routes you could go when you're studying this history. This is going to be, well, let's not do that one first. This one, a biography about the first bishop, Joseph Flagey. And this is going to be written also by Martin John Spalding. So this is going to be a biography telling his life, and it gives you a good character study. But then about Martin John Spalding, he has his own biography written by his nephew, John Lancaster Spalding, who was influential in the founding of the Catholic University of America. I wish I had more of his books. I've read a lot of them online, but he's very influential in education. If there's any teachers out there that want to hear like some good educational philosophy, John Lancaster is very important. But he's also one of our, what would you say, products of the Kentucky Holy Land. He's born here, and so was Martin John Spalding. This book also tells about him becoming the Archbishop of Baltimore, which was the the center see of the entire United States Church. And so he was very influential in all of American Catholicism, having basically like the highest place in all of the American Catholic Church. And then let's jump into Father Nerings, of course. He's a hero among many, I think. And Camillus Mays, another bishop who wrote his first biography. This is coming from the 19th century, and the second half, I would guess. And then we have this book here. It's a little, it looks older. It's actually later than the one I just showed you. It has some notes in here. Let's see. And this one's written by William Howlett. So he was a chaplain of the Sisters of Loretto. And of course, it doesn't say the year. I was looking for the year that this was written, but you can see just a really good biography from somebody who would know a lot of the firsthand information. William Howlett, I forgot to say a second ago, was a chaplain of the order that he founded. Father Nerings founded the Sisters of Loretto. We're going to see some more books from them in just a moment. William Howlett also wrote a book about St. Thomas. This is like the biography of St. Thomas. Well, it goes into like a lot of the sketches, the character sketches, just talking about the different people, talking about like the history behind the place. So really excellent, pretty short. There's a more modern version written by Gilly Simpson. Sadly, I don't have any of his books with me right now, but he is, one of the modern historians of the Kentucky Holy Land. And he also wrote a book about St. Michael's in Fairfield, which is very unique, very niche, but I think like a lot of us who like this history, that's what we like. Here is a book about Loretto. This is a very nice copy I have here. The Annals of the Century by Anna C. Minogue. This is going through just the Sisters of Loretto history. And so they spread out throughout all the American Catholic Church. They were the first American order, founded like in the United States, first sisterhood, and they went across America, founding schools and everything else. And so they have a lot of interesting history there. Some of us may have had them as nuns when we were in school. Going down another niche here, we have a book about Daniel Rudd. Sadly, many people do not know about him. He was one of the most famous or most influential Black Catholic voices. He grew up actually in Bardstown. He went to St. Joseph's Cathedral there, and he grew up in slavery. But he later on founded a Black Catholic newspaper. They still have like this big organization today that hosts these conferences and all of that. But many people do not know that he comes from our area. And so this is a modern biography just about his life by Gary B. Agee. I actually have not read this yet, but there's another book I think the same author wrote. I'm not sure exactly how they're different. That might be something worth looking into if you're interested in that. And here is a kind of rare mention, I would say. Not many people would maybe tie this in directly. I heard this from, let's see, a deacon, I forget his name sadly, who, I think Deacon Ned, who is very interested in this Catholic history in Kentucky as well. He does presentations and all that. And so he mentioned this book to me, Isaac Johnson, The Slavery Days in Old Kentucky. This is going to be also somebody who's going to talk about like the atmosphere of what it was like during those times before the Civil War with slavery and all of that, because it was something that was present in our Kentucky Holy Land. Here we go. I need to catch my breath. We're getting a little long-winded here. But this is about St. Rose and really the Dominicans who came to Kentucky, a light of the church in Kentucky by Samuel Thomas Wilson. He's also one of the pioneer educators. These Dominicans, they actually taught some influential people. One of them was Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy during the Civil War. And it tells like funny stories in here of him just like playing pranks on these Dominicans at St. Rose. That's just in Springfield, that church that looks like a castle. And yeah, Jefferson Davis would like blow out the candles on the Dominican brothers and like cause a bunch of chaos. And I think like they would have to discipline him, and he wanted to actually convert to Catholicism, but the Dominican father said, well, your father would probably not like us to like do that to you, but if you're, I forget exactly what he said, but basically if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. And so This is an interesting book just to get into some of the stories, like the St. Thomas one, of the stories of a church. That's a lot different than some of these like general biographies, which might just mention a church, but you can actually see like how these places have significance, how these places are important in the Kentucky Holy Land. They have histories that go back almost 200 years now. And one of the most special places in all of our Kentucky Holy Land is the Abbey of Gethsemane. This is a book telling you the history of this old church. Some of you may have seen this picture before, called Burnt Out Incense by Reverend Raymond. He also wrote a book, let me see if I can get this right, The Man Who Got Even with God, which is a famous fiction book in the 20th century. And this is a history that's sort of, it takes like some, what would you say, fictional routes and kind of makes the story more interesting, but trying to make it more contemplative. It's also worth mentioning Thomas Merton, the famous monk who comes from this abbey right here. He kind of talks about how this place has sort of a, contemplative atmosphere that has to be like almost made magical to be understood. And so this book, Burnt Out Incense, highly recommended. The Abbey of Gethsemane, Place of Peace and Paradox. This is going to be one that just shows you like all the different photos and all of that. I actually have a trail map right there. It's funny to flip to. But let's see. Yeah, like some photos of this place. And I think we can jump now into just another book we have here. Let's see which one. Okay, we'll get this one. The Faithful Image by Clyde Cruse. You might remember him from writing that third book I showed you, The American Holy Land. And this is going to be glimpses of the 200 history of Kentucky Catholics in the Archdiocese of Louisville. This is going to show you like some of the documents and things like that. You can see a lot of this in the Archdiocese of History Museum right in downtown Louisville. But this book, if you're out of the area, and yeah, you won't see all of this in the museum, so you can see it here. There's the Cathedral of the Assumption, which the museum is right across from. And we'll keep going to another. This one is a picture book about all of the churches, about, I guess, 2008. So this has like every church in the Archdiocese of Louisville as of 2008. And just shows you like what they're doing nowadays. So you can kind of see like you read the history of them and now you can see what's happening. It gives you more like history. So this is a good reference book if you just want to learn like, oh, I don't want to read that big book about St. Rose, but I just want to read this book right here. This will help you out. Or St. Thomas, of course. Let's see. Yeah, St. Thomas, really beautiful. I actually got to see when I went to Baltimore last summer how that St. Thomas Church was built to look exactly like the St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore. It's exactly a replica. Many people in Kentucky don't realize that. Maybe in Baltimore they don't realize that. So we're going to go down 3 more niches maybe. We have Catherine Spalding, Mother Catherine Spalding. She is from the Sisters of Charity, and this is written by a modern sister who is talking about her life. She's very important. I think she's one of the most influential female characters. So that makes it a little different than hearing about maybe all these priests. So you have Daniel Rudd, the layman, the Black Catholic. Then you have Charles Nerinx and Father Baden. Before I forget, I will mention that Father Baden and Father Nerinx have modern biographies that probably give even more details. I don't have those in my collection if you're interested in just some of these biographies. Here is some of the primary documents for Mother Catherine Spalding. This is a really nice book I found by the same author, Mary Ellen Doyle, A Life in Letters, and this just talks about some of her correspondence. I know that the Sisters of Charity actually got a letter written by Abraham Lincoln to tell, well, I think it was to his generals or whatnot, officers, to not attack or, well, of course, I don't think they would attack the sisters, but to not like stay there, not to use their resources, not to overwhelm them during the Civil War. And that's actually stored in their museum if you want to go there and see that letter written by the president himself. So I want to jump to my Civil War books, but they're like kind of in a big stack right now. So let's get through some other ones. This is another biography. Felix N. Pitt, he was one of the preeminent Catholic educators of the 20th century. This is called Journey of a Country. So, and this talks, and a lot of detail about his story growing up near that St. Michael's Church. He went on to be influential in education just in Louisville and in the American Catholic Church in general. And I think you can't really understand the Kentucky Catholic history unless you get into Kentucky history. So that's what we're going to go through for the next few books. We have this book written about the discovery, settlement, and of course Daniel Boone by Kentucky's first big historian, and even one of the most popular still today, John Filson. And so this copy here is kind of old. It has where the S's look like F's. Let me see if I can find an example. You see that opposition word right there? Instead of an F, it looks like an S, so it's kind of hard to read. You may have to try to read this out loud to even understand some of the language. But Daniel Boone, he's going to be one of the pioneers, and you have to remember that our history here in Kentucky grew up out of that pioneer era. Here's a more modern Daniel Boone biography, John McFarragut. I have not read this one, but that probably gives you some more modern scholarship if you need that, of course, if you don't want the primary source. And here are the next two books are ones that are mentioned in that original sketches of the Catholic Church in Kentucky, of the early Catholic missions of Kentucky by Martin Spalding. The first book I showed you, he mentions these histories: Man Butler, A History of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and Lewis Collins, Historical Sketches of Kentucky. These are going to give you can just read the different things like the geographical, statistical, geological descriptions. It gets into everything, the sketches of the pioneers and all of that. And to wrap things up, we're going to just go through the Civil War history books I have. So the Civil War in Kentucky by Lowell H. Harrison. It's going to go in depth on a couple of the different battles and things like that. And these are going to in a lot of ways, collide with the Kentucky Catholic history, whether the nuns are helping out or whether, some of these places may be in the area. I know St. Catherine, just right down the road from me, was used as a hospital during a battle. Here's another book by Dixie Hibbs. She just passed away, sadly. May she rest in peace. She wrote a lot of books about just Bardstown, Nelson County, which is, of course, out of the three counties, the one that has the most Kentucky Catholic history, I would say. And so this is going to give you the history of the Civil War in Nelson County. And a lot of people might not know about this next incident, Bloody Monday, where we have, you can say right before the Civil War, some of the division that was breaking out, some of the chaos and riots and whatnot, that actually happened in Louisville, and not just in Louisville, it was against Catholics. And so this is one of the worst massacres of Catholics. There were actual Kentucky Catholic martyrs made during this incident. And this book right here is going to talk about, it's going to be a fictional account of a young boy who goes through that Bloody Monday experience where St. Martin of Tours, the church that we all love, I was actually baptized there, it had a cannon pointed at that church. They thought that weapons were being stored there to overturn the election. And of course, Catholics, they were immigrants. They were not liked at that time by the people who thought that they were bringing Catholicism into Protestant America to overthrow the Protestant government and all of that. And that is, a unique way to learn about some of our history here. This is an autographed copy, actually, by Jared McDaniel. Let's see. You have kind of this unique, just about this picture, unique juxtaposition in Kentucky Catholic history. You start out in the pioneer days, and then you kind of get into the industrial era. And just by learning about all of this Kentucky Catholic history here, that you can learn about American history at large, right in time for our 250th anniversary this summer on the 4th of July. It's a very special time. I'm going to be hosting, and I'll be sharing some details about this soon, a conference in the Kentucky Holy Land. So that way we can all learn about this history together. Just last year, we started the Kentucky Holy Land Historical Society, and that has been very exciting. We had a lot of events last year, a pilgrimage and hike and presentations at the library. There are people still interested in this history, people still talking about it, people getting into the genealogy and all that. We didn't even touch on that at all, genealogy, how to do all that. That deserves another video. But yeah, there's like modern research being done, and there needs to be more of it. We need to make all of these books, as many as there are. You probably didn't know there's this much you could get into. There needs to be even more, and I don't even have all the books. So there's, yeah, books coming out. One that I would like give you, a trailer for it, you can say, by Joseph Dubay, is his book focused on those first 25 Catholic families. I think he's actually going to provide some original scholarship, and he's maybe going to dispute that 25 number that the Centenary of Catholicity in Kentucky put. They put 25 families right here, but he's actually looking at some of the modern records, and he's saying, well, there might have been more than that. And so that's going to be like some, you can say, premier modern scholarship from a very good author. If anybody wants to talk about this, you can join our Facebook group. And I would say, yeah, I hope you can dig into any of this. Ask me any questions. I would be happy to answer them. If you're wondering, I have not read all of these books at all. I do want to read a few of them before I write my own popular history of the Kentucky Holy Land. That's my idea for this year, to write a story that, yeah, can give you sort of like a doorway into all of this. But of course, go back to those first books I mentioned if you want to have a good entrance yourself into all of this. But feel free to take it from any angle you would like. May God bless you, and may God bless the Kentucky Holy Land.